I had looked over the edge. That is the only honest way to say it. Not as a metaphor polished for public use, not as a dramatic turn in a story. I had looked over the edge. I was in a VA hospital bed, 50 pounds lighter, looking like cancer, feeling like cancer, trying to remain a Marine inside a body that had begun negotiating with time. On the television, the news was announcing cuts. More cuts. Massive cuts. Tens of thousands of people. And there, in that bed, I understood something that no policy memo, no press conference, no campaign speech, and no spreadsheet could hold. A hospital is not staffed by numbers. It is staffed by human beings. And the Veterans Administration, for all its failures, for all its delays, for all the paperwork, all the missing appointments, all the phone calls that become mazes, is also filled with people who know how to look a dying Marine in the eyes. That is not a system feature. That is a covenant. And on that day I watched that covenant tremble. The announcement went through the floor like cold weather. You could feel it in the hallway. The nurses heard it. The aides heard it. The veterans heard it. The whole place changed. It was not just fear of jobs being lost. It was something deeper. It was the horror of realizing that the people who care for the wounded were themselves being treated as disposable. And I remember looking around. I remember the bed rail, the light, the television, the thinness of my own hands, the old Marine humor rising up in me the way it does when despair gets too close. I thought, maybe I can save the country some money. And then I was not joking. That is the part I need people to understand. Dark humor can become a doorway if nobody catches your eye in time. And then she saw me, a nurse in the hallway. She had tears in her eyes, not sentimental tears, not pity, not the soft, helpless tears of someone who does not know what to do. These were fighting tears. She came into that room like someone crossing a battlefield. She looked directly at me, and she said, loud enough for the hallway to hear, "You hear me, Marine?" I looked at her. "You hear me?" And then she said, through those tears with the kind of force that does not ask permission, "If they fire me tonight, I will be back here with a sledgehammer to get you to the head. Do you understand me, Marine?" The floor heard her, the room heard her, the veterans heard her. And something changed. The weeping stopped. Men sat up, Marines sat up, because she was not trying to comfort me. She was calling me back. She was not asking me to feel better. She was reminding me who I was still responsible to be. A Marine, always faithful. And there is a rule. I have said it since then, and I will keep saying it. You do not mess with those who care for dying Marines. You do not mess with those who care for dying Marines. Because when everyone else has gone home, when the claims are delayed, when the appointment is missed, when the medication does not arrive, when the check disappears into some bureaucratic mistake, when the family is sitting at the kitchen table trying to make the numbers become mercy, it is often that nurse, that aide, that clerk, that driver, that unseen human being in the system who is still standing between the veteran and the edge. That day, she stood between me and the edge. She did not do it gently. She did it faithfully, and I thank God for it. But I am telling this story now because the edge did not disappear. It moved. It moved into missed oncology appointments. It moved into gas money. It moved into VA payment confusion. It moved into foreclosure notices. It moved into medications that should have come. It moved into the quiet fear of a husband, father, Marine, teacher, and cancer patient trying to protect a wife of 42 years and a son who needs him steady. And somewhere in that I thought about the red kettles. The Salvation Army buckets I used to guard in the snow, a Marine standing there at Christmas, ringing a bell, watching people drop coins and bills into a promise that somebody would be helped. And now I am looking at those same buckets from the other side, not as an idea, as a possibility, as the next humiliating rung on a ladder I never thought I would have to climb. And I am asking the country a simple question. Is this how we honor them, the 1%? The ones who guarded the embassies, the ones who guarded the gates, the ones who stood in the cold beside the kettles, the ones who served meals in poisoned places, the ones who were told decades ago that someday they and the people they served might get sick. The ones who carried that knowledge in silence, the ones who believed, perhaps foolishly, that when the sickness came, the country would remember its promise. I was an E3 sharpshooter in an apron, a Camp Lejeune Marine. I served food in a place where the water was carrying a future none of us could fully understand, and I have carried that. I carried the knowledge that those Marines, their families, and even generations after them might one day pay a price for what moved unseen through the pipes, the kitchens, the barracks, the bodies. I carried it quietly, but I cannot carry this quietly anymore, because this is not only my story, it is the story of what happens when systems forget that care is not a line item. It is the story of what happens when the people who serve are asked to survive the very bureaucracy that promised to serve them. It is the story of a nurse with tears in her eyes who reminded a Marine that he was not finished. And it is the story of a country that needs to decide whether it still knows what faithfulness means. I had looked over the edge, and then she saw me. That is why I am still here. That is why I am speaking. That is why I am asking you to look. Not away. At this. At us. At the veterans in the beds, at the nurses in the halls, at the families at the kitchen tables, at the foreclosure notices, at the missed appointments, at the empty gas tank, at the medicine that did not arrive, at the Marine who is still trying to stand because someone once looked him in the eyes and called him back by name. Always faithful is not a slogan. It is a debt, and some debts are not paid with applause. They are paid by keeping the promise.